Okay, so in our deep dive into Parshat Bereishis through the Midrash, we're coming upon the story of the flood, and we're coming across a very, very serious topic, and that is the brutalization of women, which led to the flood. It's very clear if you read the pasuk. I will do so now. Vayiru b'nei elokim et benot ha'adam ki tovotena vayichu lehem nashim mikol asher bacharu. These so-called b'nei elokim, which we have to define, would see any woman they wanted and they would take them for wives. So a few psukim later, God already sees that this evil in the world is so deep and pervasive that he has to hit the restart button and start again. And you see one of the prominent depraved actions that is driving it is the brutalization of women by these so-called Bnei Elokim, who, according to the Midrash, would take women at their wedding and take married women. Any woman they wanted, they would take and sexually assault. So this is really what's sort of driving the end of civilization. The Midrash Rabbah takes a very strong stance on this and says that the word Bnei Elokim means judges. In other words, there are several other accounts in the Torah where the word Elokim, although it sounds like God, but it actually means it's used to talk about a judge. And the point, of course, is that these people who consider themselves very powerful and high in society and high position, they would take advantage of all that in order to sexually assault women. And this was the story that behind the verse in the Torah. That's what's really going on here. And it's interesting that Rabbi Shimon ben Yokai, who we're now a week away from Lag BaOmer, is the famous story of Rabbi Shimon ben Yokai and his son in a cave, studying mysticism, Kabbalah. He is so adamant that he actually curses anyone who interprets Bnei Elokim in other ways. It's not exactly clear what he means by that, but he's very, very adamant about this being a story of power and position used for wrong purposes. There is, however, another collection of Midrash called the Yalkut Shimoni, and it tells a different story. And that story is really a story that God is looking at his universe, and at first he sees that they're worshiping idols, and he's very upset. And two angels come forward and say, God, I told you so. You had this perfectly beautiful and complex universe, and everything was going so great. Why did you have to create man and ruin this beautiful planet that you created? And God said, don't be so quick to judge, because you guys living in this spiritual bubble up here, you wouldn't last 2 minutes down there. And they took the challenge and said, who said so? And God let them come down. And of course, in no time, they were the ones. They were the Bnei Elokim. They were the ones who were acting immorally and brutalizing women. So the question, of course, is you have these two midrashim, which obviously they can't both be true. And in fact, in general, a midrash doesn't have to be taken literally. So what is really going on here? If we're going to say that it wasn't angels, we've all maybe heard of this idea of fallen angels. So what is the point of the Midrash? Because Midrash Rabbah, uses proof that Elokim is talking about judges, and that's the narrative here. So what could the other collection be? Well, it's quite simple. If it's giving a moral message, it's basically saying that, as the Midrash so often does, going into psychology of what's going on, that some people, because of their position and their power, it really goes to their head, and they actually feel like, of course, they're not brutalizing anybody. They're actually doing what they're entitled to do. They're actually taking advantage of people, and they're above the law. They're almost like angels, and that could be the message, and that could be why the whole idea of angels was brought into this story, just to give us a background of the psychology of those who brutalize women. And just as a footnote, this brutalization of women, which started at the dawn of the world, of course, is really the very sad and twisted story of civilization for many, many centuries afterwards. And it, of course, impacted the Jews as well, because the famous story of Matisyahu, the rebellion against the Greek Assyrians, and the whole Hanukkah story. So we know that it started because they were trying to force this priestly family to worship idols. But there is also another story in a minor collection of Midrash that says that the daughter of Matisyahu, the priest, was at her wedding night, and there was a terrible edict in Israel by the occupying forces of the Greek Assyrians that the local governor had the right to take every single bride at her wedding that had spent the first night with him. And this was so shocking and disgusting that she wanted to do something about it. And so she got up at her wedding and she started to disrobe. And people, of course, were shocked. And she said, I understand why you're shocked at this, but shouldn't we all be shocked at the fact that I and every bride in Israel has to spend their first night with this Greek Assyrian governor? That is shocking. We shouldn't get used to that just because it's an edict and perhaps it was done all over the world, but we should rise in moral indignation against that. And that was the beginning of the revolt and the Hanukkah story. So, unfortunately, the brutalization of women is something that's gone on for centuries, and the Midrash perhaps is trying to give us an insight in the sick mind that can actually see this, as I said, above the law, almost like an angel, untouchable, holy person when they're doing these awful acts. Have a great Shabbos.